Hello and welcome back to Let's Talk Rangers. I'm one of your hosts, Ross Chalmers, and as always, I'm joined by my regular co-host, Kyle McLean. Kyle, how are you?
Yeah, good to be on here. Good to be talking about Rangers tonight. It's been a long, stressful day at work as per, and I'm getting into the swing of doing things on a Thursday night. Ross, how about yourself?
Yeah, I'm good. A similar day for me, actually. Very stressful, very long, but yeah, I was looking forward to this tonight. It's a way to kind of relax and things are going well at the moment, isn't it? So you're not as bothered of it coming on and doing a podcast. So I'm delighted to be here as always. And yes, as usual, I'm hosting. I will probably not do it to the same level as Kyle, but I will definitely try my best. We're trying to do this a little bit more often. So let's just get stuck into things. We'll just start with John Souttar tonight, Kyle. That's the big news that broke maybe about 5 o'clock, that he had signed a new deal until 2027. I think they put in the report that the club have an option of a further year in there, which is probably smart from the club, giving themselves that option. Just before we maybe dive into the statistics and things behind John Souttar, what did you make of that deal when you'd seen the news earlier? Like, John Souttar has been rumoured to be in talks with the club for a long time now. I think it was back in October and it supposedly broke down. What do you make of the club actually getting that done and he's going to be here for at least a couple of years?
Yeah, well, it feels like there's a bit of a sense of inevitability about this one in terms of he's been at the club for a wee while now. He's got his critics. Some people like him, some people don't like him. Um, I am probably in the camp where I am probably pretty happy that John Souttar's signed another contract extension in terms of Rule even mentioning it there in the sort of spiel after he'd signed that he's one of the leaders in the group. I think that's one thing that we can level at John Souttar. He is very, very good with sort of younger centre halves round about him. We know he's had affiliation, a supporter of the club for a long, long time, which I don't think we have enough of in the squad at the moment. But yeah, overall, I'm not surprised to see John Souttar getting a new deal. Given the fact that you look at players like Giga will be going back down to Wolves. Who knows what will be happening with Cornelius, Manny Fernandez? I mean, there's so much chat about links with him to what we've seen Bayern Munich and Arsenal being the latest ones in Borussia Dortmund. So yeah, it's just a good sensible piece of business, just keeping John Souttar at the club for another year and then got the ability to extend it by another if we need to do that as well.
Yeah, there's a few comments here. There's one from Baron Loyal. He says he's good if he's kept busy, but he's error prone if he has nothing to do all game. And I think that's fair. I think we have seen at times John Souttar can switch off. I think he's got better at that over his Rangers career. Westhill as well saying we need to build on a Scottish quota. He can do a solid job at centre back, and hopefully the club can improve him in the coming years. And I think that's fair. I think what is John Souttar? John Souttar's 28, so I think he's 28, maybe coming up 29. So I mean, he's really coming into his peak years now. So you'd like to think there's a little bit of development left to go. Actually, I agree with you. I think it's smart business from Rangers. I always think back to Leon Balogun last season and when we let him go, and I think a lot of people sat and they felt, okay, maybe it's right to let Leon Balogun go because the club will go and replace him with someone better. But we've seen that didn't necessarily happen in the early parts of this season. I always think you should build from a position of strength. Like, you should keep your players that are your first choice at the moment, and you should look to build on that. So really in the next couple of years, Rangers should hopefully be bringing in a centre-back that maybe moves John Souttar down the pecking order a little bit. And that's how you do it, instead of letting someone go at the end of their contract, not really have anyone lined up, and then you're stuck in a bit of a tricky situation. John Souttar is someone that I think there is this narrative around him that he's always injured, that he's not available, but actually the stats are pretty good for him since he joined in 2022. I think he's played over 100. He's played 127 games, what I've got noted here. He has had a few injury issues, but this season he's already played 33 games. Last season he played 40 games, and the season before that he played 41. It was only that opening year where he had that game at Livingston, if you remember, and then he was out for 4 or 5 months because he played that day with an injury. Ever since that, I think the club have done really well to actually get him over those injury issues, and I think you've seen him really find a bit of consistency. Would it be great to get him those 50, 60 games a season? It would, but maybe he's just one of those players that maybe he's only going to get the 30, 40 every year, and I think that's fine. For me as well, domestically, I think John Souttar is more than good enough. I don't know how you feel about that. Maybe Europe's the slight concern, and I do think Rangers will have to go into the market for that. But domestically, Kale, do you agree? I just think he's more than good enough for this league, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing that I'm looking at is his leadership abilities in that back line, because I'm assuming Tav will be away next year. So John Souttar is going to become the most experienced defender in that back line. You always look at John Souttar, he might not be the loudest guy off the pitch, but we can always see him organising the defence, keeping it tidy. And the other thing about it as well is, I know people have been critical of his defending at times, but I was actually just trying to think back to some of the partnerships that he's had. I mean, Leon Balogun, you already mentioned, he was pretty good with him, but I mean, some of the players I'm thinking of, Ben Davies for one, I'm sure he played alongside James Sands for a bit when he had that weird 2-year loan deal with us. I'm sure he was alongside Leon King and Robin Proper as well. Every time I've seen him this season lining up with Manny Fernandez, I really do think there's a partnership there, and I think that will be good for both players. I think John Souttar's good at, we can see him when we're sitting in the club deck, Ross. We see John Souttar sitting talking away to him and coaching him through the game. But yeah, I agree that I think his vulnerabilities and weaknesses, and because that's the thing everybody always says about Souttar, is he can get it. He's caught under the ball at times and not clearing it quick enough. As you said, you often play against much better opposition in Europe, and that tends to be where some of the mistakes have happened. Don't get me wrong, he's not perfect. He's not a perfect centre half, but put it this way, if you're going out on the market and you see a player, you've just lined it there, a player that's playing 40 games a season, European experience, won trophies at a club, how much are you going to go out and pay for a centre half like that? I reckon if you're going to go out and a replacement, you're looking at maybe 4 or 5 million quid for a guy like that. So why not just extend John Souttar's contract and keep him here for at least another year?
Yeah, I agree. And I think one of the points you made there in terms of the partnerships, I actually think he's been really beneficial for Manny Fernandez. I think he's really improved Manny Fernandez. And I think talking him through games is one thing, but I think just Manny Fernandez having a more experienced partner next to him that can maybe just make up for some of the deficiencies in his game at this early stage of his career. I know he's 24, Manny Fernandez, he's not young, but in terms of like playing at this level, he doesn't have a lot of experience. And I think John Souttar has actually really helped with that. And I think hopefully he can continue to do that with any centre-back that we bring into the club, that he can help them through it and he can talk them through games. So yeah, maybe sometimes, and I think that is an area of the park where you look at the partnership more than the individuals. I think a centre-back partnership is crucial and they have to complement each other. And I think at the moment, you're seeing with John Souttar and Manny Fernandez, they do complement each other. And it's not a coincidence, I don't think, that most managers that have came through the door now consider John Souttar the first choice. Like there's been several now that think he is the first choice centre-back. And even when Connor Goldson was here, I felt sorry for him because he was playing on that left-hand side. And I always had this idea that I thought that would be a really good partnership, but he's just not the same player on that left-hand side. He really struggles to kind of open up his body. So to see him on the right-hand side now, I think you've got a much more assured centre-half there. And like I said, I think he'll improve others next to him. So I think it's a pretty easy decision from the club, to be honest with you. I've seen a little bit of controversy online about it today, but for me, I think it's a pretty straightforward decision.
Does this mean we're not signing Giga permanently then?
It looks like it, which we're all devastated about. Although we said it last week, didn't we? He's actually started to play a bit of that game. Yeah, he's done well. So I just don't know if Rangers will match that 10 million that Wolves decided to pay originally. So that one's maybe doubtful. But yeah, I think overall, smart bit of business from Rangers. The next one's going to be, obviously the big one is going to be James Tavernier, to see if he extends past this season, because he is the other big player out of contract. And I'm sure we'll come on to that in other podcasts throughout the season. Let's move on then, Kel. So another big bit of news today actually was about the ticket allocation for the Scottish Cup quarter-final, the Old Firm Scottish Cup quarter-final at Ibrox. It's 7,500 tickets that Celtic have been allocated for the game. That means they will get the full Broomloan stand, which is unfortunate for some season ticket holders if they do miss out. I'm not sure how Rangers are going to accommodate that, what's going to happen. I'm sure we'll hear more detail about that in the next few days. But yeah, it could be potentially that some Rangers season tickets hold out, which is a shame. I did read earlier that Rangers had agreed to this, because if they didn't agree to it, a compliance officer might have got involved or something. I read something about this earlier, which potentially could have meant that that Celtic would have got more of an allocation. So I did read earlier as well that Rangers have obviously ensured that this will be reciprocated if there is a Scottish Cup tie at Parkhead. Celtic will have to give the same amount of tickets to us when we go there. So at least we've got that in there. The rules do state that the away clubs can claim 20% of the tickets. So unfortunately, any away team coming to Ibrox is well within their rights to ask for that. So it looks like the two clubs have came to an agreement. What do you make of this then, Kyle? Because there's always a lot of chat about the Old Firm fixture and more away fans being let in, and it's it's better for the game itself and things. What do you make of this? Are you one that believes that and this is good for the Old Firm, or are you someone that just thinks that the allocation should basically be the same as what it is for the league and we move on like that?
Well, firstly, I just want to comment on, when was the last time you heard the phrase compliance officer? I didn't even know that was a thing still in Scotland, by the way.
I just remember that season where they called us up about 6 times in the same year for red cards, if you remember. And then the next season they just binned it, didn't they? They just went, this is ridiculous. So yeah, that's the last time I heard of it anyway.
I can't remember her name, the compliance officer there, but I'm glad she got ejected out. In fact, probably still part of Scottish football. We just don't know exactly where she is. But in terms of this, my opinions on it are, if, as you rightly said, it's the season ticket holders and the room loan that I feel terrible for. The club will have to accommodate them elsewhere. It'll be interesting to see how they're going to work this out. I'm assuming it's, as the way my years works, it'll be CCS that gets priority first, and then it'll filter down there. But honestly, my opinion on it is at Old Firm games, do I mind having some Celtic supporters there? Not at all. Obviously, it brings a bit of atmosphere, but my opinion is I would much rather have that whole broom loan full of Rangers supporters than I would backing the team, supporting the team. I do totally understand the argument of the more traditional allocation of having that, Celtic supporters getting the full broom loan, but I haven't. It's not bothered me at all in the past. And I quite like when the teams come out and when Rangers are playing, just seeing the broom loan full of Rangers supporters. But the main thing is that as long as it is reciprocal, and if there is a Scottish Cup tie at Parkhead, that Rangers do get the equivalent number of tickets, that was all I'd see, and we'll never know until that day comes. But you can only take their word at it, and we'll see how it goes. But yeah, it sounds like if we were being sort of armbarred by the compliance officer, either you do this or it's going to be more. It looks like we've not really had much of a choice in this one.
Yeah, which is unfortunate, but yeah, you never know with them moving the goalpost, do you? In a couple of years, if we get drawn at Parkhead, you never know what they're going to do in terms of that being reciprocated. But yeah, that was what I read in the reports earlier. So you're right. We'll have to wait and see. In terms of the debate around this, me personally, I don't really care. To be honest with you, Kyle, I just want the best conditions for Rangers to win games of football, and I'm not really bothered about the Old Firm atmosphere and the environment and what's better for Scottish football. In this instance, I always want the best for Scottish football, but in this instance, when it comes to the Old Firm, I'm no bothered. I just want to win these games. That's the main priority for me. And fortunately, we've not had much trouble going to Parkhead lately with the smaller allocation. We've won the last 2 games. So yeah, this is something that always seems to get a lot of kind of debate online, and it's back and forth. And actually, it's quite split amongst the fan base. In terms of what Rangers fans would prefer, in terms of the more away fans coming in for that Old Firm fixture. But for me, I'm no bothered. Like I just want to win the game. So if the smaller attendance is good enough for everyone, then I'm fine with that. I'm sure one day it will probably go back to that older, that traditional style, like you said. But I'm not sure when that's. I don't see it anytime soon, but I'm sure it will happen at some point. Because it was something that used to happen so much before. But yeah, something I don't really get bothered about it.
Yeah, I'm just glad all the safety concerns have been alleviated.
Yeah, that's always the one that comes up, isn't it? Yeah,
miraculously went away this time.
I know, that's what I mean. That's why I don't even get involved in this stuff, to be honest with you. It's just total nonsense. So yeah, that's something that I was going to say to look forward to. It's definitely not to look forward to. So I don't think I'm going to enjoy seeing that full Broomloan full of Celtic fans. But it is what it is. That's the Scottish Cup. It's going to be a little bit different. Of course, we do have the 2 games back to back, so it will be 2 very different atmospheres, which will be interesting. But let's just hope the Rangers get through both games and they win it, and it doesn't matter by the end of it. Let's move on then. We have just moved past January, so I do find it quite interesting already that we're talking about potential transfers. I suppose it's just part and parcel of football now, isn't it? That transfers seem to always be speculated. The first one we'll talk about, we'll leave the controversial one till last, but the first one we'll talk about is Luke Graham. He's been linked, the Dundee centre-back, I think he's only 22, Scottish as well. He's been linked with a move in the summer. I think I read that Dan Purdy was the one that was tracking him. Whether that's true in terms of the individual, I'm not sure, but it looks like Rangers do have a genuine interest in him. It's coming from pretty decent sources, which is interesting because, again, this shows me that Rangers are continuing to look in the Scottish market and they are continuing to look at the best players that they believe are in this league. I thought he was very impressive at Ibrox a couple of weeks ago, Kyle. We sat and watched that game together and he was someone that I continued to comment on. I thought he just, I wouldn't say he strolled the game, that's a bit strong, but just looked really composed on the ball, and that he played that kind of left of a 3 role that day, and he was really good at coming out with it. Really physical, got a good stature about him. I actually think he is someone that could potentially add something to our squad. Is he someone that's going to come in and start straight away? I'm not sure. He's only 22. He's maybe got a bit more development to go. And as we said before, it's very different playing for Rangers. But on the face of it, he looks a good player. And reportedly, there was a 1 million bid rejected, I think, either from QPR or Portsmouth in January as well. So there is a lot of interest in him down south. So maybe that, again, this is one of those moves where you try and get him now before he goes on to bigger leagues. What do you make of this? Is this a player that would interest you, or what do you think? Is he of the required level?
Yeah, I mean, without seeing him in a Rangers shirt, that's always impossible to say. But this is one I would certainly be hopeful of. See if Rangers announced a John Souttar contract extension, and then I was going to say a pre-contract, but we're going to do something. We'll Luke Graham in the summer. I think that would be perfect. See if you sign a guy like Luke Graham on a 4 or 5 year deal with the idea that he's going to be John Souttar's successor in the future. That's exactly what we've heard the club, banging on about future planning, etc., and all that sort of stuff. So it could be a really good move. For me, I mean, I've only seen him a handful of times at Ibrox, and every single time he's played, in particular that last game, he was Dundee's best player by an absolute mile. I mean, I know I'm going to continue sort of comparing him to Souttar, but I thought his physical attributes, the fact that he can, and we never mentioned this before at the start, the fact that Souttar can pick a ball out from the back and run at a midfield and carry it, I thought that was a really good ability of his. But in terms of his, defending, he just looks like a big. I mean, that's. I'm not surprised Rangers and Rowe in particular have been linked with this profile. Big guy. I've not officially checked, but I'm 99% sure that he is over 6 foot. He was a really good defender. In terms of his defending, I'm just looking at some of his stats for this season. He's putting in 34 tackles, 31 interceptions, 25 blocked shots, a pretty high fouls committed, 97 recoveries. These are the stats that I want to see, those numbers for a guy from Dundee. That's pretty good. So yeah, and the fact you said there's some other clubs that are sniffing about him. I wouldn't be opposed to Rangers bringing in another Scottish centre half this window, or sorry, in the summer.
Yeah, I think from what I've read, I think you're right to bring it up there. I think the data surrounding him is really good, and that is probably why a lot of clubs are looking at him early. And that's when I first read that in January, I thought that's a high fee for someone that this is their first. I think it's their first 6 months in the SPFL, because I think they were on loan at Falkirk last season, weren't they? So
Montrose Falkirk.
Yeah,
that was his route into Dundee.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it clearly shows you that clubs are looking at the data and they're looking at what they believe is going to be a good player with a lot of potential. There's quite a lot of comments actually on Graham here. Baron Loyal saying Graham Fernandez would dominate any striker in the league, and that's true. And actually, there would be a good balance there, because I don't know if either of us said that there, but he's left-footed, which is rare now in terms of, and a lot of clubs look for that left-footed balance. So that's what he would bring. Westall as well saying John Stones of Scottish football. I wish if you can get anyone close to John Stones up here, I'll absolutely bite your hand off. Luke Gibson as well agreeing with us. Graham played really well in the 1-1 draw at Ibrox back in August. And Gary as well saying, I'm not seeing much of the boy Graham from Dundee, but he's looked decent when playing against us and young enough to go out on loan for a season if not ready. And I think that's fair as well, because Lyle Cameron was one that came in and I think lots had high hopes for him. And then it's not really worked out for him. We put him out on loan, and again, we'll assess that in the summer. So I think Rangers have always got to be on top of Scottish talent. You and I have spoken about that before. It's always got to be something that we look for. And Niels Coppin was the one that first actually started announcing that again, wasn't it? He made that very public that the club have to do that, and it's good to see us continuing that. So yeah, this is one that I would be quite interested in seeing us make a move in the summer. Be interesting to see what the fee is, because I'm sure Dundee will know they've got an asset, and it'd be quite interesting to see what type of fee they're looking for. If they're knocking back 1 million in January, they're going to probably look for, I would imagine, at least double that for him. So, and as we always say on this, don't we, Kill? Like, clubs are well within their rights to ask for whatever they want for their players. So that's going to be an interesting one in the summer, but I think it's certainly one that I'd like to see.
I'm all for the Montrose Maldini. That's what I'm dubbing him already. There you go.
That would be that would actually be a really good nickname, actually. Yeah, the Montrose Maldini. We'll take that. Okay, let's move on to the controversial one.
There's no controversy about this. You've been buzzing to talk about this all. This is the reason why we're podding tonight, Ross.
Well, yeah, I'll save my opinion on it till later, because you might be surprised at my opinion, actually. But yeah, the Wire reports yesterday that Danny Rule is supposedly interested in bringing Todd Cantwell back to the club this summer. So Todd Cantwell is out of contract with Blackburn this summer, I believe. I think he's down to the last 6 months. And actually, I think Blackburn's sporting director, I think it's Rudy Gesteds that used to be their striker. I think he's pretty much confirmed that deal is going to run out. I think they actually admitted they can't offer Todd Cantwell the wages that he expects. So does that tell you how much money Todd Cantwell's on, or does it tell you that Blackburn are in a really bad situation? I'm not sure. I don't know enough about Blackburn at the moment. He has played 60 games for Blackburn over the last couple of seasons. He's got 7 goals and 10 assists, and Blackburn have been, they have been a struggling side. We probably don't need to, I'll maybe talk about his Rangers statistics, but we probably don't have to dive into the player too much in terms of what to expect. We've seen him here for a couple of years, and he did do pretty well. Not as well as I think most would have expected him to do, but I don't think it was a terrible outing for Todd Cantwell at Rangers. What's your thoughts on this, Kyle? What about when you first read it? Like, what did you make of it? Was it one of those ones you go, that's obviously not true, or were you just intrigued by the link? What did you think?
Honestly, just thought it was a bit of lazy journalism again, because it's an easy link to make. Todd Cantwell coming back up to Rangers with it, but I don't know. I'll be fascinating to hear what people think in the comments and what everybody thinks watching out there, but I'm not convinced at all by this one. I mean, I feel like I've said on here a few times already, just don't go back to your ex, because it's so strange, Ross. We've been linked with so many ex-players since we've started Let's Talk Rangers. Todd Cantwell's just another one to add to the list, but me personally, just the way he left the club in terms of, because I had to double check this before we came on, because in my head I was like, I'm sure Todd Cantwell handed in a transfer request before he left us, and he did. He handed in a transfer request, was pretty open about it, was talking about his difficult times at Rangers and how he didn't go on with Philippe Clement, etc., and all that sort of stuff. Honestly, I'm not sure Clement was the issue in that relationship. Looking at it now, but again, looking at some of his stat, he's hardly torn the championship up this season. He's captain of that Blackburn team. I think they're sitting 3 points above the relegation zone. Okay, I know he's been injured for a couple of weeks. Yes, I've seen him do some sort of good PR stuff down there. I'm sure there was a photo of him at one point selling, merch behind the stand at Blackburn when he was injured, just to keep people going on. I think that, see, when you start to see things like that coming out of a club, I think that tells you all you need to know about what's going on behind the scenes. But yeah, just for me, I did like Todd Cantwell when he was here. He did some, good things, but it's just a no. I think for the money that Rangers would, okay, it'd be in a free, but I can only imagine what type of contract Todd Cantwell is going to be expecting, and I think Rangers could get much better value for money in the transfer market. Ross, what's your thoughts on your boy Todd Cantwell?
Yeah, look, I loved him when he was here. I thought he was a great player. I really enjoyed. It was I'd maybe already built up that kind of anticipation for him coming here because I'd watched him so much down south in the Premier League, and I just thought, wow, he's such a good player. Like, I'd watched him so many times for Norwich, and I always like watching a player like Todd Cantwell because he does play with that little bit of freedom, and he is off the cuff, and I don't think you have enough players like that in modern football now, to be honest with you. He's probably changed his game a little bit over the last few years. I think he's maybe lost some of that kind of running power. But when he first came through at Norwich, I mean, he was he was a proper number 10, right? He was someone that could run off the striker. He was someone that could dribble, beat a man. He could play a pass. And I think that's really why I was so enthusiastic about him signing here. I actually think he did do pretty well for Rangers, to be honest with you. I think he had a lot of good performances, and I think it is unfortunate with the way it ended. You're never going to know who was on the right side of that one. The only thing I would say is Todd Cantwell seems to get into bother wherever he goes, so that would probably tell you that he has probably played a part in that. Like I said, I did love him as a player when he was here. He actually played 64 times for us, and he got 14 goals and 11 assists. So it's not a terrible return. That's 25 goal contribution in 64 games. Would I look for a little bit higher for someone that you would consider your kind of main creative outlet? I would. But I think I remember looking at one of those graphics before he left, and he was in the top 3 in the SPFL for like the most creative in the division at the time. So yeah, long and short of it, I actually wouldn't bring him back because I just think would he, in terms of the player, would he solve some of our creative issues? I think he would, actually. I think he would really contribute to that, and how Danny Rule would use him would be quite interesting. And actually, if that's the shape we're going for with this 4-2-2, I think Todd Cantwell's made for that left side. I honestly think it is because of the freedom he's got to come inside the park. I think he's that type of player would suit it. But I think the other side, the kind of baggage you get with him, is he someone that's going to upset that squad? Like, what Danny Rule's building, do you want to bring someone with a little bit of baggage and a little bit of controversy into a group like that? I'm not sure you do. So, yeah, as much as I really did like him as a player when he was here, and I think he is a really good footballer, I just don't think he's someone that I would bring back. But there's lots of comments on this, as you would probably expect. Luke Gibson saying, I like Cantwell, he's had his chance. I don't think we need the constant Insta cryptic posts, and I think that's true. Westall as well, as I don't like all the other stuff Cantwell gets involved in. And I think that's maybe where my opinion comes in as well. Baron Loyal here, actually, an interesting comment, and someone I'm sure that will be linked with the Old Firm clubs in the summer is Congreve from Swansea. I think he's on loan at Dundee at the moment, and he's done really well. But yeah, there's plenty of comments on this. Westall as well, actually, does he have the right mentality to play for Rangers? That's a good question, actually. What do you think on that, Kel? Because I actually think he does have the right mentality to play for Rangers. In terms of like wanting to win, I do think Todd Cantwell has the right mentality, but the off the park stuff and maybe crosses a line too much sometimes. But for me, he's probably the type of player I would have liked to have played with because he does want to win. Like, that's what it's about for him. How do you view that?
Todd Cantwell only has the right mentality for Rangers if he's the superstar in the team, if he's the manager's numero uno. You saw that with Beale. Beale, he was Beale's boy when he was in there. Beale would rant, rave about him. We knew he was. Beale probably told the dressing room that Todd was one of the best players in the team several times. Clement came in and didn't do that. And yeah, I think he's got a good desire to win, but just I think I think it can be a bit tin pot at times. I'm a bit old school. I can't remember who it was that put the comment about the cryptic stuff. I hated all that. I hated it when he used to go in the huff. And like, I get it that, you know, there's a younger, different generation. They use social media a lot more. But God, this is making me sound like an old fart here, man, saying this. But
The old man shouting at clouds here.
100%. But yeah, look, I wouldn't question his ability. It's just all the other nonsense that goes on. Like I said, I think Todd Cantwell needs to be number one in that team to get the absolute best out of him. And if Todd Cantwell came back to Rangers, is he the number one player? No, he's not. There's a handful of players in that team that are much, much better than him.
I think you're spot on with that, by the way, in terms of, and I think that was his problem under Clement. I think he felt like the side should have been built around him. And I think Clement felt, you're not good enough for that. You might be a good player, but you're not good enough for me to abandon everything and build this side around you. And obviously it goes back to that infamous night. Who were we playing actually in the Europa League? Remember he hooked him after 20 minutes? Can't remember who it was.
Aris Limassol.
Yeah, that was it. The famous Aris that seemed to buy everyone. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that was the beginning of the end for him, wasn't it? So we weren't all surprised in the summer once that turned out that he was going to move on. So yeah, I think we're both aligned on this. Surprisingly, you're maybe surprised about my opinion, but yeah, he's probably someone that I wouldn't like to bring back. Just before we move on, I see this question from Ian. Can I ask whether Ross would want Todd back or Glenn Kamara? It's not even close. It's Glenn Kamara. And I seen actually Philippe Clement linked to a move for him in January there. So obviously Clement knows a player as well, right? So yeah, I'd bring Glenn Kamara back tomorrow. What a footballer he was. So good. Yeah, that was it. I didn't think Todd Cantwell would ever be brought up in this podcast again, to be honest with you, Kyle, but there you go. He's been brought up, and yeah, maybe we'll have to have another conversation about that closer to the summer. But yeah, I think we've made our thoughts pretty clear on it. So just before we wrap up, let's have a wee look ahead to Livingston. I was actually looking their stadium up earlier because as usual, I always go to call it the Tony Macaroni, but it's actually the Set Fair Arena now, which I think is pretty poor. You know, I think they could have maybe got a little bit of a better name there. I was looking into the stats for Livingston this season, and wow, it is bad. They have won one game all year in the league, which is, I know that David Martindale, I know he's not in charge now as Marvin Bartley, but I know David Martindale tried to play a bit of a different style in the championship, be a little bit more expansive. And I think he's maybe brought a wee bit more of that into the division this year. And they've just been absolutely battered for it. And I think that probably shows that when you are Livingston, you have a budget like that, you're just going to have to be difficult to beat. And I think that's why they got a lot of success for the few years they were in the SPFL. They're destined for the drop. Obviously, they're not going to recover from that. I'll be stunned if they do. In terms of Rangers, we definitely come into this with a lot of confidence after last week. And I think what's really good for us is playing on Sunday. You're hoping that results go your way on Saturday, and there is a potential for us to go top of the league, which would be massive, especially going into that game next week in the Old Firm. The press conference will be tomorrow, so we'll find out about injuries, but I would imagine that Rangers are really close to having a fully fit squad now. Like it's getting close to it, isn't it? Like, I mean, Connor Barron to come back, but you're getting close to having basically everyone available for Danny Rule. Which is again going to bring in a different dynamic and really that you're going to look at the bench sometimes and think, wow, there's big players missing out here. They're not actually getting in the squad, which is obviously only good for us. How are you feeling about this, Kyle, in terms of like, what's your thoughts on, is there a bit of I was going to say a bit of a come down because of that after Hearts last week? I always get a little bit nervous about these games because you had such a huge result the week before. Is there a little bit of flatness coming into the game where you obviously the points are just as important, but as a player, is it difficult to motivate yourself for it, or has Danny Rule got to be on top of this and these 3 points are just as important as last week? How do you view it?
Oh, it's definitely got to be the latter there. But I mean, you look at that Arsenal Wolves game last night is the perfect example of that. Arsenal blew a 2-0 lead, you know, to effectively bottom of the Premier League. So the players have to be switched on. They can't take it for granted that they're going to go there and win, which I think maybe they have done in the past. It'll be interesting to see how Rule approaches this game in terms of, I mean, because that's a full week we've had, which I can't recollect another instance this season where we've actually had a full week to go and train and get the players ready for it. I see that Livingston have brought back a couple of old favourite. I say old favourite. I see that Joel Newbley's returned to Livingston, which I couldn't believe.
Barry Mackay as well.
Barry Mackay as well, man. That's going to be an interesting one. I think previously I would maybe have been worried about Joel Newbley's physicality against, some of our centre halves. I fully expect Fernandez and Giga to start that one. I would not be. You already mentioned it earlier on about the injury that Souttar got on that stupid pitch at Livingston, so keep him away from it. It'll be fascinating to see what he does. I reckon Rule's going to use this game as almost a wee bit experimental. I can see us lining up in that Red Bull 4 treble 2 again. Maybe some slight rotations in the squad. I can see a Gassama. I know we've talked about Gassama coming on the bench, but I can see him starting that game. I can maybe see Nadiri starting that game up top as well. But yeah, it'll be fascinating to see. We've got, as you said, we've got plenty of options. It's really nice to have that feeling. It's a very good time of the season, and it could be a huge psychological boost having, a near full fit squad. I don't think Derek Cornelius is too far away from returning as well. Derek Cornelius with 2 mentions on this podcast tonight. He's not played for us in about 6 months. But yeah, it's a game. A 3 o'clock kickoff on a Sunday is a big no-no for me. But it's obviously just for the TV. But it is what it is. We'll get behind them, and yeah, hopefully Rangers go over there to a traditionally sort of tricky away ground, and yeah, go and get a victory and just keep the pressure on Hearts.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right. I think you might see a little bit of it, like maybe experimenting is maybe strong, but maybe a slight bit of rotation. Mikey Moore, I think, has played quite a lot of football lately, so I think a Jerry Gassama coming in that left-hand side, even an Ant-Man coming in on the left-hand side, I could see happening. Diamande coming back into the side as well. I think that this pitch probably suits him because of the way it plays. I think he's someone that can retain the ball really well. You might see a Chukwani go back out and he plays alongside Raskan. For me, I think the big one is I want to see that Chermiti and the Dairy partnership continue. I think we've only seen it from one game. I think you keep that running, because I think if you get another week with them and hopefully a couple of goals, you're going into that Old Firm fixture absolutely flying, and you feel that you've got a real threat in attacking areas. So I agree with you. I think there's a lot of depth there now, which is great. We didn't have that in early parts of the season. I think we've got that now. We've referred to it numerous times, so we won't go over it again. But the January windows helped us in that massively. And yeah, we have to treat it that these 3 points are just as important as last week. Like that is the truth. And yeah, there's an opportunity to potentially go top of the league or go joint level at top of the league, and I think that's the way to treat it. So yeah, I'd never look forward to that game away at Livingston. Again, if you look back to what happened in the early parts of the season as well, it took a last-minute winner from Max Aarons. So I'm not expecting Rangers to go there and run all over the top of them. But I do expect us to go there and treat it professionally and win the game and set yourself up for a really big game next weekend, which we will come to when the time is right. But yeah, that's probably all for tonight. We actually managed to get, you and I always think like, well, we've got enough to get through, and actually there ends up being, we end up talking for far too long. But yeah, thanks everyone for watching and getting involved in the podcast. As always, the comments have been flying in, so we really, really appreciate it. If you have enjoyed the podcast, please like the video and consider subscribing to the channel. It really does help us out massively. I think it's around 80% of the people that watch the content so far actually don't subscribe. So if you hit the subscribe button, that will actually really help us, and we massively appreciate all the support. If you want to listen to the podcast as well, as we always joke around, if you don't want to look at us, that's okay. I'm not going to take it personally. You can find us on all the major audio platforms too. And remember to follow us on X. I think we're up to maybe about 5,000 followers on there now, which is crazy. TikTok, we're actually really close to 10,000 as well. So if anyone's got a TikTok account and they enjoy that kind of short form content, we put lots of clips out from the podcast talking about several things. So if you enjoy that sort of content, it's there for you as well. But yeah, let's hope for another 3 points against Livingston on Sunday, and we keep this momentum going in the title race. We'll see you in the next one. Cheers.